So, welcome in to this week's masterclass. I'm very excited. This is the second time that I'm going live here in the group, so please excuse any sort of kinks that I'm still working out. So today I am actually going to be chatting about the comparison traps, toxic comparison traps, getting stuck in them and overcoming them. Now, I think for the benefit of anybody who is watching on the replay, you can always join us live inside the Quarter Life Crisis Club, where I go live every Tuesday at 6 o'clock. And yeah, if you are watching on the replay, you can comment #replay for a chance to win a 60-minute coaching session with me. So very exciting stuff. But yeah, jumping on in, let's chat a little bit about comparison traps and comparison and escaping it and all of this sort of good stuff, all these buzzwords that we're seeing popping up on TikTok and whatnot. So I want you to be really honest with me here. And I would love to know if you have ever caught yourself comparing yourself or your life to other people. Doesn't matter if it was a friend, a family member, a celebrity. If you ever caught yourself comparing yourself or what you have or what you don't have to somebody else. If you have, I would love to see some hearts in the chat. And like let's be honest here, we've all been there. At some point in our lives, we've all been there. There's absolutely no shame in it. So I'm seeing some little hearts coming through. Absolutely. Especially in the sort of a day and age with social media, it's so easy to catch yourself comparing your life to somebody else's highlight reel, right? They're only showing you the good bits. They're only showing you the really posed pictures. They're only showing you that, what they want you to see. But realistically, the reality is going to look a lot more different. And I think that is quite problematic. The more and more we are seeing these videos, especially of people who are like overly curating their fridge with all of these containers and decanting all of their food products. Like that is how deep into this comparison trap that people are falling into here. It used to just be a case of, comparing your appearance and your body, but now we're comparing bloody household items at this point. So it's all getting a bit ridiculous. The thing is, with comparison, it can be helpful. It can be a hindrance. Now, when you are using comparison for good, then it's going to be an opportunity for growth. It's going to be an opportunity to inspire yourself, to better yourself, to push yourself on. And that can be really good, if you see somebody and you think, they're doing something differently, like I'm gonna figure that out. I wanna do it more like them, and you then aspire to make those improvements and those changes in your life. That's a great thing. But if you are using comparison to self-destruct, for lack of a better word, that's when you start pulling yourself apart and you start comparing your flaws to their strengths. So it's a bit of a mismatch, it's a bit of an off balance, and that's kind of what's happening here. So it can be used for good, it can be used for evil, but ultimately the choice is yours. Now, I like to think of it like helpful comparison and unhelpful comparison. And that is where, you have your helpful comparison, where it's going to be that opportunity to, grow and, motivate yourself and expand some part of your life. But if you are just using it in that unhelpful way to just limit yourself or just berate yourself unnecessarily, like that's obviously not a good thing. And that's what we're here to work on. Hopefully bring a little bit of awareness between the two and ultimately help you escape that unhelpful side of comparison. So if any of this sounds good, I'd love to see some little fire emojis in the chat, just to make sure I'm on track and I'm making sense. So I think we've all been there. I mean, we've checked in at the start and we know that we've all been there. We've all been sucked into that comparison at some point or another. And maybe you've done this yourself, or maybe you know somebody in your friend group that does it. But when it comes to comparison, it usually happens, that unhelpful comparison that usually crops up whenever our self-esteem is low, right? And what's happening is we are seeking that external validation, and we're wanting that approval from other people instead. And you might have done this. It's something that we would usually see more in school when you're younger, but it still happens in adult life. Like, let's be real. Maybe you're with a group of friends and you're talking about something and you're like, oh, I wish I was more like you. I wish I was as pretty as you. I wish I was as smart as you. I wish I was as tall as you, whatever. And you're comparing yourself and you're opening it up to a conversation with other people because you want that encouragement, you want that sympathy, you want that acceptance, you want that validation to come from those other people. And it's kind of like that scene in Mean Girls whenever they're all standing around the mirror and they're looking at their nose, they're looking at their pores, they're picking their body apart, and they're doing it. It's that kind of comparison, but it's to make themselves feel better. There's literally no other benefit for it. And maybe you're a little bit more like Katie in that scene where you're kind of like, I don't get it. There's nothing wrong with me. But maybe you're a little bit more like the other girls where you kind of get sucked into that trap. You feed in off of it. And that's something that you can kind of see in the more toxic friendships or toxic relationships that you might be in. Kind of pulls each other down rather than building each other up. Now, the fastest way, I think, out of the comparison trap is by having awareness of it. That is literally, I was having this conversation with somebody this morning, but it is probably the hardest part, because once you bring awareness to it, it's kind of like saying, oh shit, I have to deal with this now. You can't ignore it any longer, and you're bringing that awareness in and you're going, right, okay, let's sort it out, let's deal with it, let's address it. Now, you could obviously go on and just ignore it for the rest of your life. If you're happy to live in that little bubble, then I'd recommend, exiting the live and leaving the group, because it's not going to happen here. But if you are bringing that awareness to it, then you are open to change. You're open to improvements. You're open to the growth that comes with that. So it's good. And, I think part of this awareness comes from being completely honest with yourself. Now, there is a fine line between being honest with yourself and judging yourself, but ultimately bringing that awareness in and being honest with yourself and saying, yeah, do you know what? I do spend far too long looking at other people's Instagrams, wishing my life was like theirs, or I do, feel sad when I'm at home because my house doesn't look this certain way, or my job isn't this certain way, or my relationship isn't this certain way, because I'm comparing it to other people. When you can be honest with yourself, it's half the battle. Probably the hardest half of the battle, but it is definitely half the battle. You've already won it. So what you can do then to work on this and improve on it is looking at that need for that external validation. And what you really want to do here is you need to nip it in the bud, right? And to be able to do that means that you are able to create that internal validation instead. So you're no longer looking for that encouragement or that sympathy from somebody else. You might see it, you might even do it at work. Maybe you're really stressed at work and you might go up to a coworker or your manager and you might say, oh, I feel so stressed lately. I'm so tired. I'm not sleeping. I just feel so stressed with work right now. And you're looking for that person to say, hey, I'll take over some of your work. Take the day off. Put your feet up. You're looking for that external validation for feeling that way, right? So we need to find that internal validation so that we can take care of ourselves whenever that feeling starts to kind of crop up, or any of those kind of feelings start to crop up, and we're no longer seeking that external validation from somewhere else, from that outside source. And my favorite ways to do this, and do you know what? Before I jump into it, I will preface this by saying it's gonna feel weird, and it's gonna feel a bit uncomfortable, and at times it's gonna feel a bit embarrassing. But I promise you, once you get over that initial hump of feeling that way, it will definitely feel a little easier, and it will start to become natural feeling, and then before you know it, it becomes second nature and you don't even give it a second thought. So stick with it, push through that like awkward, cringy, embarrassing feeling, and then you can just start to embrace it. So if that sounds good, give me some thumbs up in the chat, because we're here for some cringy, embarrassing stuff happening right now to help us heal ourselves. So yes, the two ways that I like to do this, they go hand in hand really beautifully, and that is through positive self-talk and through practicing self-compassion. Now, I would love for you to pause for a moment, and I would love for you to just think about the things you don't like about yourself, right? The flaws, I don't know, any aspect of you that you don't like about yourself, right? I am sure in that moment, tons of wee ideas sprung to mind. You might not feel comfortable telling me them. That's totally fine. I'm not going to do that. But ideas definitely came to mind. Now, if you were to flip that and think about what you love about yourself, what do you really admire? What are your strengths? What are your best features, your best attributes? What springs to mind? It's a little harder, isn't it? Could you sincerely tell me what you love about yourself? Or would you kind of be like, oh, I don't know, I guess I've got nice hair, something like that. Would you feel embarrassed to tell me or to admit what you love about yourself? That, honestly, that's part of the problem, right? We should never feel embarrassed for wanting to love ourselves or to take care of ourselves, right? At the end of the day, that's literally all we've got to do. You were put in this body to take care of it, so let's do that. Now, when it comes to self-compassion, to be honest, I never know which one to sort of start with, because they kind of, self-talk and self-compassion kind of create like a circle, like a loop. But I'll jump in with compassion first, and hopefully it will make sense come the end of it. But positive self-compassion, or just self-compassion in general, is essentially it's about taking care of yourself. To put it really simply, it's about taking care of your needs and treating yourself kindly, right? So that can kind of, look like recognizing if you're feeling stressed and taking that break. You understand you've got that need and you're doing something to meet it. It's about treating yourself kindly. It's about taking care of yourself, right? And it's through that. Oh, I'm gonna sneeze. No, we're good. Ooh. So it is through that self-compassion that you learn to start checking in with yourself. You start to understand different aspects of you. You learn in more detail what makes you feel comfortable and uncomfortable, and what makes you feel good and what makes you feel happy, and all of that sort of stuff. And it's important then at that point that you understand that as a human, you're not perfect, right? You come with flaws, you come with all of that sort of stuff, right? Nobody is made absolutely perfect. And that is where, when it comes to making those, making mistakes, making errors, saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, whatever, being able to treat yourself kindly in that moment. So instead of berating yourself and thinking that you're stupid and all of the terrible things under the sun, instead you're able to catch yourself and say, oh, hang on, I made a mistake. I didn't know differently. Now I do. I can go ahead and I can improve on this. I can grow from this. Like, what can I learn from this opportunity? That's where that growth mindset comes in. Whereas if you were to just stay stuck in that, that very uncompassionate way of thinking, you're just going to rip yourself a new one every time you do something wrong, and you will inevitably make a mistake. You will inevitably get caught out. And it's a vicious cycle, because when you're stuck in that comparison loop and you start berating yourself, you're going to start spiraling downwards, which is not what we want. It takes you to a very dark place very fast, so we're avoiding that. So that is then where the positive self-talk comes in, right? And it kind of is, as the name implies, it is talking to yourself positively, talking to yourself kindly. Now, you might notice, maybe you don't, some people don't, and it's always weird when I meet people like that, but you might notice that you've got a bit of an inner monologue running the whole time, and that little monologue is chatting away to you, and it is maybe encouraging you for things that you're doing, or it's discouraging you, or nagging you, whatever. That little inner monologue's running the whole time. Now, that really, we could identify that as your inner critic, right? And I know that kind of gets thrown around a lot, and it kind of gets a bit of a bad rep, but ultimately your inner critic, it's kind of like your ego kind of come into fruition here. And ultimately what your ego is doing is it's just there to keep you safe. I know people have very mixed opinions about ego, and they'll, sling it around like an insult, but over here, ego is very much there to keep you safe. And whether that is putting on a bravado to protect yourself from a situation, whatever it is, that's ultimately what's happening. And you might even see that when it comes to insults, when people talk about, oh, he's so egotistical, but inside he's just a scared little boy. You'll see stuff like that. And there's an element of truth to it, because that ego is coming in to protect you. So whenever that inner critic is coming in and it's chiming in with its 2 cents, and it's telling you you're not good enough, or whatever, that is that ego coming in to try and keep you safe. And that is where you need to understand and be able to differentiate whether it is a legitimate, genuine concern for safety here, or is it just criticizing you, just point blank criticizing you. It's being unnecessarily mean. Because if there is a legitimate, I'm gonna overthink that word every time I try to say it now. If there's a legitimate cause for safety, that's fine. Acknowledge it and keep yourself safe. That's grand. But if it is just being overly critical, obviously we don't need to listen to that. So positive self-talk comes in, and it is where you are literally at the start. It's a bit, like I said, awkward. It's a bit bulky, but you are literally talking yourself through every little thing in a very positive, very encouraging way. And how I like to describe it whenever I'm working with clients through this, how I kind of describe it is, imagine you're talking to a child or a dog, if you're a pet person, and you're encouraging them, and you're doing it so enthusiastically and so kindly. And, maybe it's a kid trying to put a cup on a table, and you're like, yeah, you can do it. Put it on the table. And yeah, you're doing so great. Fantastic. Oh my God, amazing. Same thing, right? Same thing. If it's a dog, going for a pee, and you're like, wow, that was so good. Or a big stretch. We always encourage dogs when they do a big stretch. Same thing. You want to keep that encouragement going, that kind self-talk happening the whole time, as you make mistakes or as you do things right, So if you're having that, if you've made a mistake, you've done something silly, maybe you said something and you feel embarrassed about it. It's that inner self-talk and going, do you know what? That was a bit embarrassing, but it's fine. It's okay. You didn't upset anyone. You're doing fine. You made a solid attempt at that joke and it flopped. It's okay. So keeping that positive self-talk going, and what happens is you start to strengthen it. And it's kind of like a little angel and devil on your shoulder situation, where you'll have the positive self-talk on one shoulder, and you'll have the devil on the inner critic on the other shoulder. So as you strengthen that positive self-talk, it becomes louder. It becomes second nature. You're not constantly actively thinking about it, but it is the predominant voice in your head compared to that inner critic that's constantly picking you apart. And what's really exciting is as you keep doing it, as you keep practicing this, you reach a point where you will catch a glimpse of yourself in a mirror. And the first thing you think of will be a nice thing about yourself. Like, that's pretty bloody cool, if you ask me. Like, if you think that's cool, like, let's see some hearts in the chat. Let's see some hearts in the chat if you think, like, wow, that would be a pretty amazing thing. So, yeah, that is the beautiful combination of positive self-talk and positive compassion, right? Or self-compassion, right? They go hand in hand together really, really nicely. And I think it's a really great starting place if you want one thing to take away from today's session, and that would be to practice this in a way that if you were to think about the thing that you did or the thing that you're saying or whatever, and think about how you would react to that, and think, would you treat your best friend like that? Would you say that to your best friend? If you wouldn't, don't say it to yourself. Don't do it to yourself. Don't treat yourself like that, right? And I'm sure if you can imagine, if your best friend, wow, that could have gone terribly wrong there. If your best friend came up to you and just says, oh, Holly, look, I feel so stressed right now. Like, I've just got so much on my plate. You're not going to stand there and you're not going to say, work harder. You need to work harder. You need to do more. You need to push yourself. Like, keep going. You're not going to say that to her. You're going to be like, hey, it's okay. Chill. Let's go put our feet up. Let's go watch Twilight. Let's chill out for the afternoon. Like, it's going to be fine. Let's relax for a little bit. You're going to help her through that situation. You're not going to slag her off and berate her for it, right? So, if we have any Twilight fans in the chat, then I don't know if I want to see that. Let's be fair. So honestly, if I'm honest here, this sort of work, this is next level shit, right? This is next level deep inner work that's happening here. And it is going to go a lot deeper than any journaling exercise you might have done. And the reason being is because you're creating concrete evidence for your subconscious during the rewiring process, right? So whenever you're starting to do this, you're breaking down that old thought pattern, that old belief system, you're breaking that down. And instead, what you're doing is you're rebuilding up this new positive, affirming belief pattern instead. And that is going to happen 10 times faster when you have evidence. Your brain loves evidence. It will always look for evidence. It's kind of like whenever you're thinking about buying a car and you decide to yourself, do you know what? I would love to get a Mini Cooper. I know Maggie's here and she loves her Mini Coopers. And you start seeing Mini Coopers everywhere. And you're like, wow, what's going on? It's to do with your subconscious. It's bringing this to your awareness, right? So it's bringing that evidence in, telling you that, you're looking for the right thing. You're on the right track. It's popping up for you. So that's why we need this evidence whenever we're doing that subconscious rewiring, so that it is just going to solidify in your mind. Now, if you want to take this to the next level, then you can do that by working with a professional like myself, who's got the tools, who's got the training to really deep dive into this inner work and ultimately unlock all of those internal limitations, all of those internal beliefs that you might be struggling with and struggling to overcome those on your own. Get somebody else to help you out with it. Makes it 10 times easier. So if that is something that you would be interested in, by all means, you can send me a DM. We can have a chat about it and let's see what we can kind of come up with. But as for comparison and comparison traps, I hope you have found today's live useful. And that's it. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget, you can always vote for the next topic on the polls that go live on Friday. Or, of course, suggest anything that you would like to see or hear about in the comments as well. So, yeah, I hope you have a really lovely Tuesday evening. And I will see you in the next live masterclass.